20 years, oh my God, that is a long time.
I think the biggest challenge is that we are dealing with data and thus with data protection in nearly all parts of legislation in all political fields. So the main challenge, I think, is to ensure that with all the further legislation we will create in different areas, we are not weakening but further strengthening fundamental rights and privacy and thus data protection.
Well, I think one of the main challenges would be to educate citizens about the meaning of data protection in order to be not an isolated discipline, but a foundational concept all around education. I truly believe data protection should not be seen as a specific discipline apart from regular issues of citizenship, but they should be treated as something on your day-to-day life. So data protection should be part of schools, of education, and citizens should enjoy their rights to data just they have any kind of political rights or consumer rights. I think this is the main challenge, to enlarge the epistemic community and make sure citizens can understand that as a basic and foundational right.
20 years, oh my God, that is a long time, and I'm pretty sure data protection cannot solve the climate crisis. However, I think it can help with many of the other challenges. There's one particular that's top of mind for me, and that's artificial intelligence and how it will evolve, where it will go. But I think that data protection has a very important role to play in AI systems being developed in a fair way, in a transparent way, and in an accountable way.
Such an important question, and it's one on which the US and Europe actually share common challenges, illustrating how important these kind of discussions are. The first is AI. This technology is fundamentally different than the type of data processing that we've seen and tried to supervise and oversee in the past decades. It processes information in inscrutable and opaque ways that are going to challenge overseers and regulators. The second is China and the rise of China as a technology power and as a corporate power. When many of the main cloud computing platforms and social platforms are run out of China, we're going to see a model of data protection spreading through the world that is fundamentally different and arguably inimical to the one that both the US and Europe, with some differences, have tried to promote in recent decades. And then the third and final one is trust. We are in a time of social transformation, unfortunately declining social trust, fragmenting social trust in both the US and Europe, and how our intelligence bureaucracies and our data processors deal with the question of, do people trust you with their information in these challenging times, is going to be a difficult one for both Americans and Europeans.
So I believe that the main challenge when it comes to the next 20 years, but also this is a challenge that we are already seeing now, right? It's trying to understand how data invasive technologies are actually eroding democratic principles and are actually eroding democratic societies themselves. So what are the solutions to that? That I think it's the main question to ask ourselves. We will need to have robust legislation, that's for sure, and this is something that the European Union has been making efforts and has achieved, I will say. But we also need to have human rights centered enforcement. But also we need to have a bigger civil society's role when it comes to this enforcement, but also when it comes to try to understand what are the harms that all of these data invasive technologies are causing to society, to collectives, and to individuals, and to empower them and for them to be able to be at the center of anything that has to do with protecting societies, with protecting democracies, and at the end of the day with protecting fundamental rights, which is what the EDPS and what the European Union stands for.
A question for the next 20 years is, will we have data protection? We had a moment in 2018 with the application of the GDPR, where Europe said, these are the rules of the road for the digital economy, for the digital society. And since then, we have not actually applied those rules. If we continue to not focus and actually make data protection a reality, I don't think we're going to have it for that much longer.
Well, I think that this topic has been debated quite interestingly in today's panels. And what, for example, Commissioner Jourova brought up is the massive collection of the data and, for example, micro-targeting. And this combined with the AI creates a very potential, it creates the potential of misuse, of abuse of the data. And this is why it's very good that we have the digital rule book in place here in Europe. So we have the GDPR, where the EDPB plays a very significant role. And then, of course, we have the whole new digital framework in place. But I don't think that we should stop here on the borders of the EU. This is also a momentum to work with like-minded countries outside of Europe who share the same values, who share the same concerns as we do. And this is also why it's very important to continue into contributing in the global dialogue in this matter.
We know that all democracies are not to be taken for granted. They are somehow at risk, and if we want our democracies to still be democracies in the future, we have to be thinking about power, how is power structured in societies, and this includes thinking about what are we doing with information, with data. So we need to always keep in mind these democracies are fragile potentially. It's not that they will forever exist. And then to protect them, we have some fundamental rights. So we have these rights that are at a higher level, that the legislators will come and go, but they cannot change the basics, the essence of these fundamental rights. And there we have privacy, data protection. Their role is to protect us from the fact that democracies are always this fragile status. I think that is perhaps a bit theoretical, but that will be the main concern for me.